Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Lincoln, Kia, Hyundai. Great new inventory. Fabulous lineup of pre-owned inventory, all with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Great service department, a sales staff that works with you. That's why they have so much repeat business. It's Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Gregg Murphy in a moment. First, our play-by-play call today. Franz Wagner airballed one and then threw up a prayer at the wire.
Got it.
What pressure, B.A.?
Oh.
What pressure?
Juwan Howard has one more timeout. Yep. Juzang. And, he missed it.
Timeout.
Timeout is called. Smith's got it. Across the midcourt line. Smith's going to pull a three. This is for the lead. No. And did it expire? The officials look up. Enough for a catch and shoot. Dickinson will put it in. There's the catch. Here's the shot. Wagner off the glass. No. Oh, it's over. And UCLA from the first four to the final four.
It's like VCU in 2011. Brian Anderson, the call along with Jim Jackson on TBS last night at Lucas Oil Stadium. Look, I was just happy for Michigan and Michigan fans, because I think that's the first time between the Big Ten tournament and the NCAAs that any of the Michigan fans have ever been at Lucas Oil Stadium. Oh. Okay. With that, we bring in Gregg Murphy. Murph, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us as we look forward to what's going to be a great podcast.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me. And, I'm very excited about kicking off this new venture.
Yeah, and, the ideas come out from all sorts of places. Sunbury Broadcasting was right in the thick of this particular idea. When it was presented to you, what ran through your mind with ideas?
It's always fun, as you know, to be able to kind of make a living talking about sports. And so when the idea was presented, hey, what about starting a podcast? I thought to myself, why not? I've had the opportunity over the years to talk to so many players, active players, retired players, and just listening to them tell their stories about the days that when they were in uniform and playing, and the way they're able to bring it back in such great detail. I've always marveled at that, and I've always enjoyed listening to the guys tell the stories. So I thought, why not? Why not get a chance to let some other folks hear these stories as well? So that's really the idea behind Glove Stories. Let these guys come on and tell a couple stories about their playing days, and kind of let people in to the inside the clubhouse that not everybody gets a chance to see all the time. And, when you talk to athletes about their playing days, they can go on forever about all the good things that happen. So it's always a lot of fun to hear them talk.
The fish was that big.
Exactly.
but Gregg, when you're sitting there and you're talking with Mike Schmidt and he's telling stories, or you're sitting there with a Charlie Manuel and he's telling stories, how difficult is it for you sometimes to maybe come up with a question where maybe you're saying to yourself, I don't think they've ever been asked this before, when they've been asked so many questions? How challenging is that, because you just want to change it up a little bit?
Yeah, and I do think that is the challenge, and that is the idea behind what we're trying to do, is get these guys to maybe tell some stories that, haven't been told time and time again. And, some guys are really good at that. Other guys, you really have to push and pull and kind of get things out of. But, Steve, what I find myself in talking to these guys sometimes is I get caught up in the moment, and I forget that I'm running the podcast, and that I have to come up with that next question, because I'm just listening to the stories that they're telling and enjoying them myself. So, that's a part of it as well. But when you get a chance to talk to Mike, the best player ever to put on the uniform for the Phillies. Those kinds of moments, they kind of just speak for themselves. And then when Charlie, who I spent a couple of years with while with the team, and Charlie was the manager, he can talk about baseball 24/7, and his recall is unbelievable. So getting a chance to kind of relive the 2008 season, which we're going to do with Charlie kind of game by game throughout the podcast, is going to be a lot of fun, because if people haven't heard Charlie just kind of wax poetically about his time as the manager of the Phils, you're in for a real treat, because he loves to talk about it. He loves to tell the stories, and he's just got that engaging personality.
Also, there's another part that people may not realize. Charlie's a brilliant mind. And that's a brilliant baseball mind. What does it take to? It doesn't sound like it takes much to do it, but what does it take to tap into that so that the listener is richer for listening to it?
Yeah, that's the key. And Charlie is exactly as you described. I mean, he really understands the game at a different kind of level than most people. And I don't know that he always got a fair shake when it came to that kind of description about his baseball knowledge. But people around the game, and people who know Charlie, and people who have had a chance to sit and talk baseball with him, you figure it out pretty quickly just how locked in he is to this game and how he sees it a little bit differently than everybody else. And, so it's so much fun to try and get that out of him. And, he gets so excited, and when I'm sure you've talked to Charlie before, and when he starts to tell stories, he kind of gets excited, and sometimes he rambles on a little bit about different things. But when you listen to what he's saying and how he's explaining it and breaking down someone's swing or talking about a particular game, it really is kind of remarkable. And you do see what kind of baseball mind that you're dealing with. And Larry Bowa is going to be doing the same thing for us for the 1980 season. We're going to relive games from the 1980s, the 1980 season. And he's very similar in that regard, his recall and his ability to tell the stories. So we've really lucked out with getting Charlie and Larry on board on every podcast.
So much of this job, too, is about relationships. As you're putting these podcasts together, how much has it helped over time that you've built personally some great relationships with the individuals you talk to, Murph, that then allows the conversation to flow better?
Yeah, I think that's key. I'm lucky enough to know most of these guys, a little bit better than maybe some other folks do. I've spent so much time in and around the organization, on the airplane, in team hotels, and you do develop relationships that way. And so I think they trust me, which is a good thing. And
yes.
I have the ability, I think, to kind of reach them at maybe a little bit of a deeper level than perhaps someone who's just covering them from the outside. We're gonna sit down with Mickey Morandini coming up next week, and he's a guy that I got to know even better. Of course, I watched him play when he was on the team in '93, but I got to know him as a coach when he was here with Philadelphia, and then after that. He's the commissioner of the Phillies Fantasy Week every year, and I go down to that. And you get to know these guys on a whole different level, a personal level. Mickey's one of the great storytellers that I've come across. So I'm really excited to hear what he's going to bring to the podcast next week.
Yeah, I remember him managing Williamsport, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And listening to him, it's like, holy mackerel. He's something else. Yeah. Pat Porter's
he's sneaky
the same
funny,
way.
too. Very funny guy.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, he's got a dry sense of humor.
Yes.
Very dry sense of humor he has. Also, with it being opening day, you've got one of the beat writers, Matt Breen, on. So you get an opportunity to swap back and forth your ideas about opening day.
Yeah, and the idea behind that is, after we've kind of looked back and been nostalgic about the Phillies franchise and some of the players, we're going to quickly touch base with some of the guys that are covering the team this year and just get a feel for what's happening each week with the 2021 team. Because I think fans, at the end of the day, love hearing the old stories, but also, want to hear some insight from the guys that are in and around that clubhouse each and every day. So we'll mix it up. We'll have some of my old broadcaster buddies, Tom McCarthy, Ben Davis, John Kruk will come on, and some of the beat writers as well. So just a little add-in at the end of the podcast just to stay connected to this year's team.
Yeah, and staying connected to this year's team, what's your initial thought going in? I mean, obviously, optimism reigns supreme because on this particular day, as I was kidding the previous guest, the Pirates are tied for first. But
that's right.
But what's your thought on this particular team that they have right now?
I think they're going to be pretty good. The division is a bear. We all know that. The Braves are a terrific team. The Nats are loaded with starting pitching. The Mets lineup looks like on paper is going to be pretty darn good, and they've got Jacob deGrom. So, obviously you have your work cut out for you playing in the NL East. That said, I think, they return a lineup that was one of the best in baseball last year at producing runs, and you have to believe they're going to have similar success this year. And I think the rotation is a little bit deeper this year. I think Zach Eflin has figured out some things, and I think he's going to be a big part of this rotation. So, and also I think, you go down Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, it's a better starting rotation than it was a year ago at this time. And then obviously we know about the bullpen. It would have been hard to go backwards, but I think they've taken some big strides going forward. So, April's going to be tough. Their schedule is a bear coming right out of the gate with the National League East. You also have the Cardinals in there. So it's going to be interesting in the month of April to see how they play. But I certainly think this team is talented enough to make it to the postseason, whether it be through a wild card or maybe even catching those Braves and winning the division.
We're inching our way back to normalcy along the way. So right now it's 50% as of I think it's Sunday. It'll be 50% allowed in to ballparks. Just getting people back in, what kind of difference do you think that it just makes to the general feel of the ballpark for a player?
It's interesting because I've talked to a couple of guys about it, and as well as anybody that I think the time of taking fans for granted has come and gone. So many times you'd have a packed ballpark, but there'd still be a disconnect between the players on the field, maybe, and the fans. I think last year really showed these guys in uniform just how important it is to have those people in the seats, cheering them on, giving them the energy, that extra little bit of that home field advantage. A lot of guys have remarked about how much they missed that and how much they didn't realize how much they would miss it until it was gone. So I think it's huge, and I think it's going to be, across baseball, league-wide, but everybody's going to get that extra juice back in their home ballpark. And for the fans in Philadelphia who are going to get a chance to come down and watch the games, I'm thrilled for them because I know so many of them missed it so much. I know I certainly did. And I think just getting back there and feeling that normalcy, as you said, is going to be great for all of us. And that's what sports does. So many times it kind of resets us back to normal, and that's what I love about it.
Glove Stories with Murph is produced and distributed by Sunbury Broadcasting Corporation Media Partners. It's available on YouTube and can be downloaded on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other major podcast providers. Could not ask for a better host. Gregg, thank you so much. Appreciate the time and the work that you put into this.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's great to talk to you. I really appreciate you having me on. And, we're looking forward to this relationship going on and on. So thanks again for having me on, and good go Phils this year. Let's hope they do some good things.
Absolutely. Gregg, thank you. Gregg Murphy, this podcast is going to be fabulous. I mean, look at episode 1, Love Stories with Murph.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to kick it off.
Mike Schmidt, Charlie Manuel, Phillies beat writer Matt Breen. It's a pretty good opening day podcast. Episode 1's release is tomorrow.
And then you'll be able to watch them, too. Watch them on YouTube if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then it's also going to be available on Eagle 107 before first pitch every Sunday, starting this Sunday as well.
We'll come back with more in a moment, brought to you by Sunbury Motors on News Radio 1070 WKOK. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years. Great to have you with us on the show today on this Wednesday. Do you have snow in the forecast there tomorrow?
We do, unfortunately, tonight.
Yeah, we do too.
With
we
rain.
Do too. No, I'm teaching class this morning. I'm finished with class. And there are, of course, windows in the building. And I'm looking outside. I'm like, oh, it's poor. I mean, because when I walked in from the parking deck, no issue. Nice, comfortable. But I brought a jacket with a hat that had a hood on. I'm halfway through class. I'm looking out. It is pouring. Now I see here, we're going to get an inch of snow here in State College tonight. Unreal. Inch of snow tonight. Now, that's not the latest. I remember one time, and I remember the date being May the 12th, getting 3 inches of snow. This is years ago, obviously. May the 12th, getting 3 inches of snow. Ooh.
Well, being a Clarion grad, I had the occasional May snow myself many times.
Yes, Clarion, that would happen, yes. That would happen. Now, here at Penn State, there was no spring break. So I'm talking to my students today, and I said, look, next week on Monday and Wednesday, we're going to really get into play-by-play work because your next project will be a play-by-play project. One of the students said, there is no class Wednesday. I said, there's no class Wednesday. I said, what's Wednesday? Arbor Day? What? He said, no, it's a wellness day. Oh. I said, wow. I said, that's huge. I said, I needed a break from you guys. Oh, I said, a wellness day? Really? Yeah, so wellness day. Now, we had one here 2 weeks ago. It was a Thursday, so it didn't affect my class this time. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's for the COVID reasons, right? Because there's no spring break?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And they don't want to put the wellness days on a Monday or a Friday.
Right.
And the reason they don't want to put it on a Monday or a Friday is they're trying to keep it so that you're not taking 3-day weekends.
Exactly. Bucknell's doing the same thing.
Yeah. That's the reason why. I'm like, okay. Okay. That's what we'll do. And so I pushed the project back a week. I mean, I don't care. I'm like, okay, whatever. We'll push it back a week. That's fine with me. Yeah, I'm here to make your life easier. So it's all good. It's all good. The Final Four set for the men and the women. Men's Final Four, of course, is taking place in Indianapolis. The women taking place in San Antonio. The women will be Friday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN. In fact, let me revise that. Friday night is going to be at 6 o'clock on ESPN. 6 o'clock ESPN. South Carolina against Stanford. Then the nightcap on Friday at 9:30 on ESPN will be Arizona against UConn. The men's Final Four will be Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium, with the game starting at 5:14, despite the fact that Doubting Thomas over here didn't believe me. Houston and Baylor lead it off at 5:14. The game at 8:34 Saturday will be UCLA Gonzaga. And I brought that up, and once again, I get questions. I don't get it.
I like that reference.
Tony Knopp in the next half hour on the business of sports. This is the one that drove the suit to the edge. He always looked at sports as a fantasy. But then again, the suit's life is a fantasy.
Yes, this is not his favorite topic, I know.
It's not his favorite topic, talking about the business of sports. To him, it's, he saw what I saw. Meanwhile, Tony's in the back room counting receipts, making sure the suit gets paid. So we have Glove Stories with Murph. Great stories. Great stories. Mike Schmidt, Charlie Manuel, Matt Breen, looking at this year's team. We had come up with another idea entitled Greatest Shikellamy Moments with the Suit.
Oh, no.
Which we tried out on the phone the other day, and the dog fell asleep. We felt that the reaction said it all. There was no need for any other commentary.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is The Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15. Hummel's Wharf, online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Lincoln, Kia, Hyundai. Great lot filled with pre-owned inventory. All with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Great time to deal with a sales staff that works with you. That's why they have so many repeat customers. Fabulous service department. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf. Online at sunburymotors.com. And with that, we bring in the incomparable Tony Knopp to rejoin us. My friend, welcome back. It is wonderful to hear you.
Hello, hello. How are you guys?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
Good. Staying busy. It's rushing back pretty quickly across the country, and everybody's kind of rushing to figure out what to do with all these tickets they're starting to get.
Exactly. So how are corporate entities and how are teams handling, okay, I can do 50% now, maybe 75% later, then maybe 100. How are they going about their business to make that work within the configurations of either their arena or ballpark?
It is so fascinating, just event by event. Some companies are trying to opt out of their inventory. Other companies are trying to get as much inventory as they possibly can and taking the opt-out inventory from other companies. And the individual fans are buying up all the expensive stuff that corporations usually buy. I mean, I was talking to one of the providers for one of the major events, because, they have those consolidator groups, and they do Kentucky Derby, they do events like that. And they were saying that they've done more revenue already for next year than they did the year prior, and the corporates haven't bought yet. It's all just twos and fours. It's just people who have been stuck at home that want to go out and do it. And so it's really fascinating because we kind of get a good look at it before anybody else does, because we see the companies start to load their inventory, and the amount of inventory they're loading shows that it's back. I mean, inventory for next month in baseball and, late summer, it looks like everybody's anticipating being full force. So it's the water spigot has been turned back on. There's a lot of companies out there that are trying to use a teacup to catch a fire hydrant.
Lucas Oil Stadium being utilized for the Final Four this year. It was supposed to anyway. Next year, it's the Mercedes-Benz Dome in New Orleans. I'm going to assume that tickets are starting to fly on that thing now, right?
It's going to be absolutely massive. It's a shame this year. Lucas Oil is one of the best stadiums for the Final Four. Indianapolis is a great town. My Trojans got smashed last night. They were not prepared for that. But
that's okay. They played a machine.
They did. My goodness, that was a clinic. But they are already in a position where they're trying to figure out how to balance the demand that's going to come from the regular consumer with the regular demand that comes from the corporate sponsors, because a lot of those sponsors didn't get to activate this year. So if you're Capital One, or if you're AT&T, or if you're Verizon, or if you're any of those large companies that get around that event, you didn't get to do anything around it this year. So now you're planning on next year being a special occasion. Because think about it this way. What the companies do a really great job of is they make it possible. Most people think when a company is taking out a customer, it's because it's some bigwig taking out a bigwig, and that does happen. But the vast majority of it is companies giving people access to something they can't get otherwise, right? It's sold out or they couldn't get it. Well, now you have 5 times the demand from the general public, and the companies still have their inventory. So they're trying to figure out, these events are trying to figure out how to balance this. Because it used to be that, you know, the companies would buy 20 to 30% of the inventory, which would cover 60% of the revenue. And then the general fan would cover the rest. But now the general fan demand is so high, you have to try to find that balance. It's quite fascinating.
The Masters, of course, is coming up. And the Masters, they don't release anything. And I mean, they don't release the size of the crowd. They don't release the TV deal with CBS. I mean, which is fine. That's their prerogative. They're a private club, and that they can do that. But the PGA Championship will be in May, but that's in South Carolina, and then the U.S. Open is in La Jolla.
Yeah.
So what is South Carolina? You and I both know is wide open.
Yep.
What kind of restrictions could the U.S. Open face in June in in suburban San Diego?
Well, what people around the country may not understand, and that's fair because they may not travel there, is California is a very, and we won't talk politics, we'll just talk about how they are because it's the question that we're asking, right?
Yep.
California is seen as a very, very blue state, and it votes that way. But what people don't understand is San Diego is a very red county in a very blue state. Very predominantly military, Republican congressmen, Republican municipal government, right? So it is a really interesting battle happening between the city of San Diego, the county of San Diego, and the state of California, because the state of California's government is very blue. And this comes in the question of economic prosperity. So we spoke with the PGA about this yesterday, and they don't know. We spoke with one of the largest restaurant owners in San Diego County, which owns 28 restaurants, many of which are in the La Jolla area. They have received zero guidance. Steve, they don't know. They don't know what to do. So San Diego County is anticipated to be in the orange this week, in the orange tier, which means 50% capacity for most things, 100% for grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera. So it would seem like it's going to be open, but we have no idea.
Right. The NFL releases officially what it's doing with its TV deals. Not much has changed except Thursday night. ESPN gets a little more leeway. Mm-hmm. Let's start with this. Inventory-wise, what can the 17th game mean for the leagues? What does it mean for the fan?
It creates more opportunity for fans to attend the game. And what the NFL is trying to do is get international on top of adding an additional game. So when they add this game, what they're trying to do is assign international rights to teams and then eventually have those teams play a game in those markets. So that's where we're eventually going with this. And there's natural fits, right? The Dallas Cowboys are going to be in Mexico. And, you know, you've already had the Jaguars and the New York Giants playing in Europe. The question is, how does this mature over the next couple of years? Because that's really the thought behind that 17th game, is let's use this game as an opportunity for us to grow the pie in the international market, where the NFL's been very strong, but they're getting their teeth kicked in by soccer. in too many regions that will be valuable as those regions become more wired and more connected. And so it means in the short term, there will be more revenue for the teams that are hosting the additional game. That all makes sense. But more importantly, it gives them the leeway to start to create the international following that they see the mega clubs have. Because you and I talk about this a lot because you're very well educated on this, and sometimes the casual fan isn't. If you actually pull up the value of the top 10 franchises in the world, soccer is dominant. Mm-hmm. The NFL, there's a couple baseball teams, but they're looking at what Real Madrid's doing internationally. They're looking at what Manchester United's doing internationally. They're looking at what those clubs are doing internationally, right?
Bayern Munich.
Yeah, and what they're doing internationally, and the NFL saying, we don't play any international games. Manchester United comes on tour to the United States every summer, right? Bayern Munich plays in China regularly. AC Milan travels. Juventus travels. The NFL doesn't do that, so they're trying to create that scenario by adding this game and creating more revenue opportunities so that they can share it with the players and bring up kind of that bottom-level player so that they can add roster spots and pay more money.
Yes, what's underneath the layer of this is I don't think people realize that in the initial year or two of this, the NFL will be playing 4 games internationally.
Yep.
And that's in this contract that I think a lot of people do not realize. So now the next part, Thursday Night Football, nobody really wanted, but Amazon wants it.
Oh, yeah.
What's your thought on, now I know some people have cut the cord. We know that. What's your thought on this deal and what it could mean to the future of what the NFL wants to do with it, and also other leagues copycatting?
Right. I think the way the NFL looks at it, their TV deal is still incredibly lucrative. They still dominate. I mean, you look at the top 20 rated events every week. The NFL is 11 of them. Right? I mean, even crummy games are doing better than most people's favorite television show. I mean, every now and then you get a 2.5 Men or a, one of those shows. Everybody Loves Raymond at the end, where they get massive ratings, and those shows get crushed by Sunday Night Football. It's not even close, right?
NCIS, right?
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, it's 2-1 in most cases. So what they're looking at is trying to better understand the streaming audience and then better measure and monetize that streaming audience, because, yes, streaming makes it more difficult to have the more traditional ratings numbers that we use, which are the Nielsen ratings, but streaming also makes it a lot easier for us because now once we move to streaming, we can use the browser and we can use what we know about the person to personalize opportunities to them, not just for sponsorships, but for gaming. Right? So those streaming is going to be this massive change from the network model, which is ad-based and ad-driven, and they're trying to work some of the betting into that. When you move to streaming and you kind of consolidate the two, we were eventually going to get to that place. Now you can personalize the experience for everybody watching, where the ads are being shown are tied to the NFL, but they also are taking into account your personal browser history and your gambling history. Who do you bet on? What do you bet, and how?
And and by the way, if you have Amazon Prime, which everybody in the station does, because they just, the guy in the corner office is on it all the time. We want him selling more, but that's a different story. But if you have Amazon Prime to buy, you have Amazon Prime in your TV. I don't think people realize that.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the whole idea, is this subscription model platform that has access to your personal information. Look, what Amazon and Apple and Google did, which is genius, and it's something that we talk about a lot here and people don't realize it, is they made a trade of convenience for data, and nobody realized it. Like, if I came to you in 2006 and I put the iPhone, which came out a year later, in front of you, your first response would have been, what is that? I don't know how to use it. But your second response if I told you, Steve, what I'm going to do with this device is I'm going to track everybody you call, wherever you go, what you buy, how you browse, and when. And then I'm going to use that information and weaponize it to sell you more stuff. You would call the police on me. But what Apple, Google, and Amazon and Facebook have all done so successfully, and now, the new layer of that with Snapchat and et cetera, is they've made something so convenient for you that you don't realize what the trade-off is. And what Prime's done so well is they've said, listen, here's a high level of convenience, a little bit of a discount, you get your stuff faster. This is all wonderful. Meanwhile, we're just collecting everything you buy. We know more about you than anybody. And now when we pay for something that you're more interested with the NFL, it gives us more ability to sell your information to merchandisers, put things in front of you, and eventually get you gaming as well. That's what this is all about. So it's a genius move that it's a genius playbook that they've been exercising for the last 17 years. And that's what Amazon's doing here. It's really transparent and smart.
Yeah, I got a note from Amazon. We said, we've been tracking your habits. You're cheap.
Don't want to sell this guy anything. Yeah, he gets the penny slot bet.
You've referenced a couple times in there the gambling part of it. And to me, with some of the tweets we've seen to college basketball players, yes, are there ignorant people where race comes into play? Yes, but I think you always have to ask the question, did you gamble money on the game? What is gambling going to mean, not just in that regard, what is gambling going to mean as an advertising outlet for networks, for stadiums, for arenas, for ballparks? What can that mean in their revenue stream?
It's they've been planning for this for a long time, right? And it's one of the most integrated marketplaces that you could bring in. Europe has had it this way for a while. For the listeners who haven't gone to an event out there, if you go to an English Premier League match in London, you can walk up at halftime and literally place a bet at a book that's in the stadium. I mean, it's so integrated into your experience. You can walk down the street and place a bet. It's just everything that you're doing. And so that's been a normal part of society there. And the digitalization of this, being able to take this online and personalize it so I know how you like to bet and where you like to bet, just makes this more interactive. And eventually what this turns into is, how do we create an environment that brings more fans in so we can sell them more stuff and so that we can get them to game more? And the ticketing aspect of it eventually just goes away. I mean, right now, they really like the idea of you having to pay a small amount of money to get into a casino, right? But in general, if you're playing enough, if you're spending enough, you don't have to pay to stay in the casino, right? I'm not at that level yet, but we know people who are. And
yes, we do.
That's the way this is going to become with sports. It's going to be, okay, you can buy the season ticket, but once you've gamed to a certain point, your season ticket's on us. Once you've experience this enough, like, we're going to have people that are going to securitize, and they're going to basically supplement your attendance at the event because it drives more business for me. Please don't charge Steve $180 to go to the game because I need him there because he'll spend $600 on my fantasy drafts or on my fantasy gaming site. So it's really interesting how this is all changing. For those who didn't see it today, Fox Sports they're no longer the Fox Sports regional sports networks. They changed the name. It's Bally's now.
Yep.
The Bally Sports Networks. This is the future. It's here. And it's been coming for a long time.
It absolutely has. There will be kiosks inside of stadiums and arenas on the pro level.
Oh, yeah.
In every place you go. Now, the college level, I'm not so sure they want to go there with that. But on the pro level, that's what we're going to see, where you can go up and say, you know what, I'm going to make a prop bet at halftime.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they want. They want you to be a part of it. And what's really fascinating about this is the conversation that happened in the Supreme Court about college sports today.
Yes.
Because the questions that were being asked by Sotomayor were very similar to the questions that were being asked that led to Major League Baseball's antitrust exemption, forever ago. Yep. So even Thomas, who barely ever asked any questions, was very active. So we don't know what that looks like with NIL. We don't know what that looks like with, Oliver Luck, who's been thrown out there as the possible next Pac-12 commissioner. He's on the board of a company that sells NIL rights consulting into colleges. Mm-hmm. It's just what you said is like, we don't know what that means or if it's applicable. We have no idea what college sports are going to look like in 5 years right now. This is the time in our history that I think more is changing than even the conference realignment of 15 years ago.
I agree with you. And finally on this front, and it's baseball. To me, the NFL got quick cash to get himself back on track post-pandemic with the TV deals. And look, their labor agreement, which passed 1,019 to 959 a year ago, which barely passed, opened the door for this to happen now. Hockey's already expanded. Vegas, Seattle, they've done it. To me, the quick cash is the NBA expanding by 2 in a couple of years, and baseball's expanding by 2 in a couple of years. But baseball can't do it until they get the collective bargaining agreement going.
Yeah.
So, Tony, I mean,
it's not going to happen anytime soon either. The biggest problem is they're looking at football and the revenue share that happens there. They're looking at basketball and the revenue share that's happening there. And it's just the chasm to cross to bring Major League Baseball's economics anywhere near what you see in the NFL and the NBA is just too broad. It's just never going to happen.
That's right.
So I have no idea how they're going to solve the problem. It's way above my pay grade, but I think people don't realize that we've said in the past, there's probably going to be a strike or a lockout. And I know 94 happened. This is as bad as 94, if not worse.
It's Rob Manfred's pay grade, and he doesn't know.
No.
All right.
And I know the casual fan probably doesn't realize that a third of minor league baseball teams got wiped out last year.
Oh,
not by COVID. Baseball wiped them out.
Yep. Well, baseball did it to them. COVID didn't do it to them. Baseball did.
And I think they just had perfect timing with COVID showing up that people don't realize that a lot of those teams that you've heard of, they're not there anymore.
They went from 160 to 120, and that was their plan, 160 to 120.
Crazy. It's crazy, but it all is driven by the dollar, right? You see what Endeavor filed for their IPO today, right? All of these things are this consolidation of, they're looking at where they think this is going to go, and they're trying to place their bet on that. And Major League Baseball is terrified that they don't have the young fan right now, that the young fan who likes to day trade, the young fan who likes to game, the young fan who believes in legalized marijuana, booze at the games, for college sports, all of that stuff, that has to be part of the experience for them or they're going to leave. And you and I are old enough that we remember the first time when booze was allowed at sporting events for the NCAA, right? I was around. I was in college. You could drink beer at the USC games.
Yeah.
And then they banned it, and now it's coming back. So all of these things are just going to be really interesting to see how fast they change because, like we've talked about, I don't know if Major League Baseball can win back that young fan right now. The only thing they have going for them is participation is up amongst the young fan. But soccer's been saying that for years, and I think soccer might have already taken it.
Right. We'll talk again in a month because this is a blast. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, anytime. I love talking to you guys. Hopefully, I want to get out there. You guys are going to Wisconsin. That's your first road game, right?
Yep, September 4th. September 4th
at Whiskey.
Yep, September 4th at Whiskey. Let me know if you're going to be there because we'll have a good time.
Yeah, I want to be somewhere. I'm climbing the walls. I usually go to a lot of fun events, and we haven't been to any in a while, so we'll see.
White out again this year is probably going to be Michigan. Michigan here this year. So, all right.
Michigan at home, yeah. It's too bad you guys didn't get Ohio State last year.
But by the way, Auburn is here this year.
I know, and then you guys are going to Auburn, which is going to be
a year
really
later,
fantastic. One of the greatest fan regrets I have is not going to Auburn when we did the home and home with them at SC. And I didn't go, and I really wish I had. I just didn't think we were going to be that good, and Matt Leinart turned out to be great. So
I just think that you ought to start thinking ahead on a trip down there. Because I know somebody would like to have you down there. That'd be me.
Oh, man. Yeah, it'd be super fun.
Tony, thank you.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
You bet, brother. See ya. Oh, my goodness. Suit's pulling whatever hair he has left out. But again, I see that picture of him on the phone and the dog asleep. And I say, Michelle, hasn't the dog suffered enough? All right, back tomorrow. Great to have you with us on News Radio 1070 WKOK.